Hello folks, Why Guy here again. This video is called The Why Guy Says No Love, No Truth. I don't believe you can have the truth without love in reference to the gospel, reference to the good news. Okay? I recently did a video called The Why Guy and Friends, where it was myself, my wife, hello sweetie, and Joe and Susie. Hello Joe, hello Susie. We all got together. It was impromptu, it wasn't planned, and we had a wonderful discussion. If you're at all interested, you can look that up, called The Why Guy and Friends. Well, anyway, have you ever wondered why the vast majority of Christians just don't feel comfortable with sharing the gospel to friends, family, co-workers? You ever wondered why? Have I been the only one that was in that boat? Now, there's a practical, reasonable reason why you don't feel comfortable with it. And it's kind of subconscious. It's not just insecurity, folks. See, the people from pulpits will tell you it's because you're insecure, or you just the one thing they do say is the truth is you don't know God's love. Well, I'm going to hit on that a little bit because that was the main topic my wife brought up. There really is a lack of love, okay, and it's the understanding of love. And if there's a lack of love, that tells me there's a lack of truth. And I'm going to explain that a little bit, and that may not make sense right now, but I hope I piqued your curiosity just a little bit. As I said, there are practical, reasonable, and logical reasons why you just don't feel comfortable with sharing your version of the gospel. And I'm saying your version, and you're going to understand that here in a moment as well. Because is it possible at all that you believe in a different gospel than the one Jesus said was the good news, and the one Paul said? Now, Paul said that if anyone comes to you, I'm paraphrasing terribly, if anyone comes to you, angel or man or whatever, comes to you saying a different gospel than the one I'm sharing, let him be accursed. Now, I'm not going to chase that rabbit of accursed, okay? That's just it's a figure of speech. It's a very strong statement. He's saying don't let anybody share, a different gospel than the one I'm sharing. And I shared, the Why Guy did a video called The Why Guy Good News, where I explained in detail that the gospel message, the good news message that Christendom shares and the one Jesus shared are polar opposites. They're not one and the same. Who are you going to believe? What Jesus said was the good news, or what man says is the good news? Are you going to share the gospel that Paul spoke of? Or are you going to share the gospel that men have added to? Okay? Some people are so blind they think it's all one and the same. It is not, and I want to point out some of those differences with this video. Now, as Joe would say, if you really believe in hell, now understand something, Paul didn't mention it ever, not once. He wrote what, over half of the New Testament? He never once mentioned that in his gospel. Never once. So if you're adding that to the gospel that you say is the gospel, that Jesus came, died on the cross to save us from hell, you're accursed. According to what Paul said, simple as that. You are accursed because it is a different gospel. Jesus never mentioned hell even once. When he described the good news, you've got to consider these things. Okay? So why aren't... Anyway, back to what Joe said. Joe said that if you honestly believed that, that hell's part of the gospel, every waking moment you'd be out there sharing with somebody, every waking moment. Well, we're not. And why is that? Why aren't Christians taking every opportunity at their, every opportunity? There's practical reasons why. Okay, the first one, I'm going to just share three to keep this video short. The first one is fear. And let's be honest. Let's be honest with ourselves. You're fearful about what people will think. That's the number one. I know that's number one because I was there. All right? You're fearful about what they'll think about you. Okay? Which basically makes you pretty selfish and self-centered. I'm talking to myself. Okay? Selfish and self-centered makes me out to be a coward. Okay? And I have more love for myself and my... myself and my comfort zone than I do the eternal welfare of others. I just don't have the will. I just don't have the willpower to go out there and do that. Okay? i.e. The power's missing. And what is that power? The power is love. Who is love? God is love. All right, this isn't rocket science. Then God is the needed power, and the reason the power is missing, now this is conclusions I had to come to. The reason the power is missing is because it's not of God. All right? Sure, you can derive it up out of your own theology and your indoctrination and your own willpower. You can go ahead and share this false gospel message. If you want, you can do that. But the vast majority won't do it. And there's a reason why. Because God ain't in it. It's as simple as that. Okay? Now, in context of sharing the gospel and warning people about hell, if you're fearful about it, think about this for a second. Stay with me. If you're fearful about sharing this gospel, okay, and it's a fearful message that you're sharing, let's face it, hell is a fearful message, and it brings fear into the hearts and the minds of the people you're sharing it with, there's fear, fear, fear right there. Now, you explain to me how the perfect love of God casts out all fear. Yeah, it doesn't add up. All right? Everything is based on those three fears. Fear of sharing, fearful message, and it puts fear in the hearts of the people who hear it. And you have the gall to tell me that that's the truth, and then that's love. It doesn't add up. Okay? Now, the reason that God isn't giving you that power to do that, again, as I said before, God just simply ain't in it. All right? Sorry for my lack of English here. God ain't in it because it's not the gospel and it's not from God. Jesus and Paul, neither one of them agree with that message. Okay, now that was number one, fear. These next two are, and concluding the video, they're fairly short. The second one is, I've heard it say that, well, you just don't love them enough. Well, how can you love them enough when you're not certain that God even loves you? And a lot of my viewers, especially Christians, say, oh, I know God loves me. Then tell me, why is it there's that nagging little part of your gospel that's in the back of your mind, okay? It's got to question God's love. How can God, who is love, abandon billions of people to an eternal torture chamber? That's got to be part of the equation. If it's part of your gospel, that little nagging question that's in the back of your mind has got to be part of the whole scenario. Okay? So that's why you don't love them enough, is because you're not convinced of God's love to begin with, because God's love is in question. I hope that made sense. The last one, and to conclude this video, is God hasn't laid it on your heart. Some will say, and a different way of putting it is, well, God hasn't, I wait for God to open up those doors, divine appointments. You know, I used to use that one a lot. Okay? Well, basically, why hasn't God opened those doors? Okay? Usually when God opens doors, it's just to love people. I've noticed that. It's just to love them. Rarely is it to share the message of hell. It's to just love on folks. Now, why doesn't God open those doors very often with the multitude of people? Because it's not the truth. And it's not the gospel. And it's not from God. Because Jesus and Paul, again, never, ever mentioned hell in their description of the gospel. Well, I hope that this video has shed a little bit of doubt on your understanding of God's love, that He loves us far more than the gospel of hell. And signing off. Thank you for viewing.